What do you think the community of St. Paul's really want?
For me, I'm still in the process. They wanted a St. Paul's African Caribbean Carnival. Okay,
and what would
with
that
all the
entail?
rich tapestry of what Carnival entails going back, are we talking 50, 60 years? Interwoven. Obviously, we've moved on in decades.
21st century. This is
but
young people there are saying they're happy. Do
the
they
young
want something
people
different
involved.
today?
Pardon?
These young people, do they want something different today, you think?
I think some young people
From what
would.
we had 50, 60 years ago? Like you just...
Yeah, I mean, some would and some won't. I mean, we've got to respect each other's voices, you know. I don't like all the same music young people like, vice versa.
Clive, it could be age. Could age got anything to do with this? So, we are still trying to go back to what we had in 50, 60 years ago. But is that the reality today?
Listen, I've said BMW or, Mercedes got their brand. And they stick to that brand, and they will always come out with new cars, right? Because time changes. But the principles and the ethos of what the St. Paul's African Carnival is, the ethos is gone, right? Yes, you can go right back to the beginning of Carnival, which you asked the question about, the youngsters and all that. We still have to remember, even though the first Carnival or festival was not called the St. Paul's Festival or Carnival.
Yeah, okay.
It was called Eastern, St. Paul's, St. Werburgh's, Montpellier.
Okay.
Because the idea around it was for us as African Caribbean or African people from the Caribbeans, it was about to show who we are, to be accepted because of the racism and all the things that we were going through. Lucky enough, there were other people from different cultures in that community that joined forces. So you have to put it in its place. But then it changed to African Caribbean Carnival.
And today, I mean, if you had I don't know, Amirah, if you can advise the board, if you have to advise the board and the committee today, what would you be saying to them?
I would say to them that they need to be honest. They need to come out and be honest about that. They actually don't know what they're doing. They do not know the essence of St. Paul's African Caribbean Carnival. And for me, the whole thing about St. Paul's African Caribbean Carnival was the education program, right? That was the most important thing. That was the thing that we went into the schools and we delivered that. We could see what they had learned through the procession. The children learned about that. The teachers learned about that. They learned to make proper big costumes. I remember in 2006 when we made a costume, it was sold to the museum. And the things I'm seeing now, what they're calling costumes, takes me back to the years of when I was a children, when you were putting tassels on. Do you know what I mean? We passed all that. We had support from the Arts Council, Pax Nindi, all that big. Bristol is so much more bigger and better than that. And it breaks my heart to see what these people bring back and say they are putting on and representing. And it actually is so doing us a disservice, So I just want to stress that I am glad that as local African Caribbean people, we did not do anything, because that's important. But I'm also glad that they also went about it the right way. They got their tens, they did everything, right? Because, back in the day, they'd just say we couldn't do nothing and we'd just go and make noise and whatever. We had people who had grown up in St. Paul's who went out of their way to do the right thing. The bit I am not glad about is how we were able to be descended upon, a community descended upon, with people doing what they want in our community, which was supported by the local authorities, and it was okay.
Okay. Did you sell? Okay.
I did have one observation, which I'll leave you guys to think with as well. One things I kept seeing online, which I found really interesting, because the makeup of St. Paul's has changed massively. The one thing I constantly kept seeing was Bristol Carnival. That was one of the most amount of texts I kept seeing online. Bristol Carnival. St. Paul's wasn't even mentioned on there.
And that's the CIC is Bristol Carnival. And this is why I say where the underhandedness of it was to call themselves St. Paul's, because they could have just said, we're doing a Bristol Carnival, this is our first year and this is what we're about, and going ahead. But what they did, because St. Paul's African Caribbean Carnival was so well attended, people come from internationally to that, and it already had as Clive said, its own brand and its own followings and everything. It jumped on that and tried to mimic it. And here we are years down the line, do you know what I mean? And people are looking back and saying, oh, well, St. Paul's African Caribbean Carnival is not what it used to be. And it's not the same, because it's not. It's a total different entity.
Okay. Still got my guest here. Thank you for staying with us. So let me begin with Clive again, because what should we take? What piece of advice would you give the Carnival committee, and how would you do it? What would be your step from here?
I would say it's not because certain characters or different cultures of people come into St. Paul's and live gives them the right or feeling that they know the culture, right? And why I say that is me, myself, growing up in Bristol from the 60s, we have had white DJs who've grown up in the culture, and when they play the music, they're playing the music of that culture, whether it's from reggae right up to jungle or whatever genre of music, which comes through the culture.
So the music you heard on the street that day that you weren't impressed with,
exactly.
It wasn't.
And I'm not
representing the African Caribbean culture, which the Carnival is supposed to reflect.
No, because you had white guys around there playing roots music. That's not what I'm talking about. That's part of the culture.
Yeah, that's part of the culture.
We had Enterprise used to have white guys back in the 60s and 70s playing reggae music. But what I'm saying is, if we're going, people come in and said, oh, you could do what you want. This is times have changed and people are here and so. No, the old thing is about keeping the ethos and the journey of our journey in coming into England as African people from the Caribbean. So whatever genre of music flows with that culture, and the education side is what Amirah is talking about, which we know, the dance and this. We have no one in our community or in probably Bristol who is being able to study our culture, that we can give more light and more life to the city. It's all underhanded, and then certain people just grab a little piece of it. The bus boycott. And then that's now, oh, this is culture, we're teaching culture. No, there's so much more about our community, which our youngsters need to learn it, so we can then go out, or they can then go out and teach it into the schools over generations. And this is what is being stopped. Our culture and our elders or ancestors before us, their gift and their journey that they have given to Britain and in Bristol, it's not being taught as an educational theme and to schools and
Carnival
people.
Is seen to do on that. So hoping that's what you're going to be telling the committee when you do have a conversation with them. Amirah?
I think there needs to be a big public meeting. I think the committee needs to be held account for, what's happened this year. Not just this year, but also in the past. I think that there needs to be a real, I don't know what's the word, where you searching in that what is it that you actually stand for and what is it you want to deliver. And I think it needs to be really clear about the education program and what it intends to deliver. And I think we need to be saying as well, as people in the community who have grown up with the proper carnival and understand the teachings that can bring in so many levels. I was just thinking that, through Carnival, when we used to train local people to be stewards, we used to do a training program up to Carnival, and then they would work in the Carnival and they would get their badge and stuff to be able to go on. It's a tool to be used which actually impacts on people's life. It's not just one big party. Mm-hmm. And I think we really need to understand that. And if you want one big party, that's fine, but call it one big party. Don't call it Carnival.
Okay. Judith?
I would like to confer that I agree with what's been shared. The only thing is I'd like to add is let's be honest, the Carnival chose the theme. We didn't. We had no involvement in the theme. They chose the theme. Let's remember what it was called. Backyard. We know what that means, yeah? Roots to resistance, okay? So what we had on Carnival Day, Mashup Day, yeah, was roots and resistance. Very clear, powerful message that something's gone wrong. Let's see what was shown. Thousands of people came to St. Paul's that day, and they all were part of Roots and Resistance. That message needs to go back to the current Carnival message. There's something wrong with your messaging. There's something wrong with your true and deep understanding. I actually loved what our director said from there. But you need to reflect on what's actually happening. You have lost your way with your own community. You are not serving us anymore. You need to remember we are your assets. It's something just came up for me. It's called assets-based community development. They need to get back to knowing who their assets are. We had historical venues that should have been part of Backyard because it started in St. Paul's. It didn't start in Portland Square or Circuit Media. Love you, but nah. But
or high rise.
Do you know what I mean? So it should have been here. How have we not got a good connection with your cultural, historical, global majority venues in St. Paul's? And your communication was abysmal. It was Backyard. You used social media. Back in the day, we used communication. We talked to people, and they don't even talk to us anymore. So Carnival, you're missing in action. And
okay,
I'm done.
So I'm hoping as a collective, you're going to get in touch with the St. Paul's Carnival CRC and reflect from the community perspective what the people are saying. Because, there's one half that's saying, they had a very good time. Indeed, there were areas which reflected the African Caribbean culture, like you mentioned before. Maybe they're the ones saying they had a good time. And then you heard some young people say, really had a good time. Is it, again, what made them had a good time? But we are actually reflecting on what you saw, and I think that's important for the community. So hopefully you take it back to the committee.
Well, the committee needs to reach out
to the community.
To the community, because when the once a year when they've contacted us, just before Carnival, all year round we hear nothing from them.
And if they don't,
well, if they don't, it will happen what happened before. But I think more people will be organised, and we will organise amongst ourselves. We know what we want, we know what we're worth, and we know what we need in our community to not just to party, but to grow our children and to make it a safe community for all of us. So, we won't allow it to happen again like this.
This is indeed a longer conversation which we keep going on, and we'll see what happens in the next few weeks. And hopefully we have you back again. I'm sure they will reflect to what you've said today. Thank you very much, Clive Smith.